well-established Rich coming right back at you. Today we got to talk about these DNA findings on Black Americans, because this is one of those stories that can break your heart and build your pride at the same time. This ain't just science. This is history speaking through the blood. When I first heard this information, it hit me in a place I didn't expect, because as Black Americans, a lot of us already know our history was stolen. But when you find out that violence, survival, the mixing, the erasure, and the resilience can still be seen in our DNA, that's a whole different kind of pain. Because now you realize slavery didn't just touch our family tree. It touched our bodies. It touched our bloodline. And that's why I think this conversation matters. Because a lot of people in our community have never heard this broken down in a way they could understand. They hear DNA, genetics, ancestry, and they think it's all too scientific. But this is not just about labs and test results. This is why so many Black Americans feel like we come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. This is about how a DNA test can make you feel proud, angry, confused, and heartbroken all at the same time.
In 2023, a team of researchers at USC and Stanford University fed over 15,000 genetic profiles into a computational model. They wanted to answer one of the most quietly controversial questions in modern science. What exactly is written inside the DNA of Black Americans, and how does it compare to the DNA of Europeans? When the results came back, even the scientists paused, because what the data revealed wasn't just surprising. It dismantled assumptions that had been sitting unchallenged for decades. And it told a story that no history book had ever been able to fully tell. Let's start where the science starts, with a number. When researchers from the University of Pennsylvania and Cornell University sat down to analyze DNA from 365 Black Americans, 203 West Africans from 12 different countries, and 400 Europeans from 42 countries, they expected to find a relatively clean genetic picture. What they found was something far more complex. The range of African ancestry within the Black American population alone ran from as little as 1% to as much as 99%. Think about that for a moment. Two people who both identify as Black American can have genetic profiles that are almost entirely different from one another. One person's genome might look almost identical to someone from Lagos, Nigeria. Another person's genome might look more like someone from rural Ireland, and they might both be sitting in the same church in Atlanta on a Sunday morning.
The part that hurt me first was the realization that many Black Americans may never be able to trace our family line back the way other people can. Some people can say, my family came from Ireland. My family came from Italy. Some can say, my grandfather's grandfather lived in this village, went to this church. He's buried in this cemetery. Black Americans don't always get that clean road back. Our road was attacked, burned, renamed, and sold off piece by piece at auction blocks. That's why this DNA information hits different. Because when a Black American takes an ancestry test, we are not just looking for a cute fact to post online. We are trying to find a door back into a house that was set on fire before we were born. And sometimes the results can't give us a clean answer. They give you African regions. They give you European ancestry. They give you different threads from different places. And you still sitting there looking at it like, this is me, but why does it feel like a crime scene? Because for many Black Americans, the European DNA did not come through love stories. A lot of it came from power. A lot of it came from slavery. A lot of it came through white men who had power over enslaved Black women who had no legal protection over their own bodies. That is hard to say, but it has to be said. Because when people say the average Black American may carry a significant amount of European DNA, that is not just a number. That is the blood testifying. That is the blood saying this happened. That is history leaving receipts inside us when America tried to lose the paperwork. And that's why this story is heartbreaking. Because it reminds us that Black American identity was not formed under normal conditions. We were not given a clean beginning in this country. We were brought here through violence, stripped of our names, cut off from our language, separated from our family, and then told to build a life out of the broken pieces. But here's the other side of it. We did build. That's the part that gives me the chills. They took our names, but they could not take our soul. They took the language, but they could not kill the rhythm. They broke the family tree, but the roots kept living underground. And somehow, out of all that brutality, Black Americans became one of the most influential people on earth. We took pain and turned it into a sound. We took humiliation and turned it into a culture that the whole world borrows from every single day. So I don't want people to hear this and only feel sad, because the truth is heavy and it is ugly. These DNA results can make you feel like something was taken from you that you can never get back. But they also show something powerful. They show that we survived what was meant to erase us. They show that even though the records were destroyed, the blood kept a copy. That is powerful. Now let me say this carefully. Black Americans are not a different species. We human beings just like everybody else. But we are a unique historical people. Nobody else has our exact combination of African roots, American slavery, European violence, cultural reinvention, spiritual survival, and global impact. That's what makes us special. Not separate from humanity, but forged through a history that should have destroyed us and it didn't. That's a miracle from God. The research also shows that Black Americans come from many different African roots. We're talking about connections to people in Yoruba, Igbo, Akan, Wolof, Mandinka, Congo, and other West and Central African lineages. And that matters because for hundreds of years, the system tried to make us believe we were just slaves. But we were never just slaves. We were the descendants of people with kingdoms, languages, music, spiritual systems, farming knowledge, metalwork, family structures, trade routes, and civilizations. Slavery was something done to our ancestors. It was not who they were. And the DNA science is starting to help us recover pieces of that history. It may not give everybody the full movie. It may not tell everybody the exact village that their blood came from. But even a piece matters when your people have been denied the whole map. Every region matters. Every ancestral signal matters. Because that's not just information. That's restoration. Now the
Science confirmed what lived experience has always known. Black American is not a genetic category. It is a cultural and historical one, but here is where it gets even more interesting. On average, studies consistently show that a typical Black American carries somewhere between 73 and 82% sub-Saharan African DNA, between 16 and 24% European DNA, and roughly 1% Native American ancestry. The American Journal of Human Genetics put the European figure at about 17 to 18%. Other studies, including a landmark paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, found a median of 18.5% European ancestry, but these averages mask something extraordinary. That European DNA did not get into Black American genomes by accident or by choice. It got there through centuries of forced labor, systemic exploitation, and the sexual violation of enslaved African women by white enslavers. Scientists who mapped the ancestral sex of that European DNA found that European ancestors in Black American genomes were overwhelmingly male, and African ancestors.
Now, the second part of this conversation is about health, and this is where we really need to pay attention. For decades, a lot of medical research was built mainly around European descended populations. That means treatments, dosages, risk factors, and medical assumptions were based on bodies that did not fully represent Black Americans. Think about how serious that is. You have a people with one of the most complex genetic histories in this country, but the medical system too often treated white bodies like the default body. That's not just bad history, that can become bad medicine. And this is why Black people have to take their health more seriously. We are not just white people with darker skin. Our history is different. Our genetic story is different. Our stress is different. Our relationship with the medical system is different. So our healthcare needs to respect that difference without turning it into racism, neglect, or laziness. Now, some of the research talks about the immune system difference, and we got to break that down right now. This does not mean that Black people are superheroes who can't get sick. It does not mean everybody else is weak. It means human populations adapted over thousands of years to different environments. Some traits that helped our ancestors survive in certain African environments can still show up in our genetic story today. Some can be protective. Some can come with health risk in modern America. That's not weakness. That's biology carrying history. They all remind us that our ancestors faced real survival pressures even before coming to America. But in modern life, these same genetic realities may require better screening, better research, and better care. That means we need to know our family history if we can. We need to get checkups. We need to ask questions. And the bigger message is this. Black Americans are not a lost people. We are people with an interrupted archive. They ripped out the pages. They changed the names. They destroyed the records. They tried to make us start from nothing. But the archive was never completely destroyed. Some of it stayed in the blood. Some of it stayed in the music. Some of it stayed in the way we season our food, raise children, worship God, make rhythms, speak with style, and turn suffering into beauty. So when I talk about DNA, don't just look at it like pain. Look at the survival. Look at the genius. Look at the fact that after everything that was done to us, we still became culture makers for the world. That is not an accident. That is resilience written in human form. And if this research does anything, I pray it makes Black Americans stand a little taller, not because the history was pretty, but because we are the proof that the worst thing done to a people does not have to be the last thing said about them. Our story is not just slavery. Our story is survival after slavery. Our story is beauty after brutality. Our story is of people who had everything taken and still created something the world cannot stop copying. That's why this DNA information matters. It tells the truth about what was done to us, but it also tells the truth about who remained. We remain. We still here. And our blood has been telling the story the whole time. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe. Establish Rich. I'll be back with another one. Peace.